Have you ever wondered what would happen if Mark got his powers much earlier? For example, in his childhood. When Mark turned 8 years old, he suddenly began to gain Viltrumite powers from his father Omni-Man's genes. Omni-Man saw this as a great opportunity and began to take a much more active role in raising Mark, sometimes taking over the initiative from his mother Debbie. At such a young age, Mark doesn't understand what's good or bad, so he listens to his father in everything. Because, as we know, a father is far from the least admired figure in a child's eyes. Nolan gradually teaches Mark the ways of the Viltrumites, tells him about where he's from, and, as in the original universe, kills the Guardians of the Globe. But much earlier. Gradually, everything unfolds as expected, and Mark begins to see regular humans as cattle, just like cows or chickens, seeing them only as tools to achieve his goal, the conquest of the planet with his father. But the only one he doesn't remain indifferent to is his own mother. Although Nolan teaches Mark all things Viltrumite ideology, Debbie sometimes interfered with this, and so she was reprimanded and punished more than once. It was then that Nolan placed his goal of conquering Earth above his human family. Debbie tried in every way to resist and teach Mark truly good things, but each time Nolan won, assuring him that people are just animals, expendable resources. They would say, "You're not a machine, Mark. You're a human. This is your strength, not your weakness. You are my blood. You shouldn't feel. You must win. You are Viltrumite." And so, when Mark turned 10, it was time to execute Nolan's plan, which he had been preparing for so long. Together with Mark, they finally began to conquer Earth, destroying cities. But Mark, during some ruthless moments of killing people, saw his mother's face and heard her voice, forbidding him to do so. During the attack on Chicago, Mark again froze, in a trance, recalling his mother's words. But Nolan noticed this and quickly pulled him away, reminding him of their mission. And so, during another destruction, when nothing could resist Mark and Nolan, Mark noticed that somewhere among the rubble lay his mother. Debbie was lying there. In a panic and protective rush, he ran to her, trying to free her. But Nolan pulled him away again and they began to fight. During the conflict, Nolan, to prove his point, broke Debbie's arm with a single press on her wrist. Mark, of course, was shocked and in pain, and in a surge of anger and rage rushed at Nolan, striking him. A fierce battle began between them, where, in the end, Nolan easily defeated his son. At the same time, GDA and Cecil arrived at Debbie's still living body, saving her, since she was not only a tool for controlling Mark's mind, but also a GDA agent. Yes, all this time, Debbie had been a GDA agent, specially chosen to influence Nolan before he destroyed the world. But it seems that Debbie had failed her mission. As for Mark and Nolan, unlike the original universe, Nolan leaves Earth not because of his feelings for his family and son, but because Mark is unstable. He realizes that Mark is an unfinished and weak product. His son, whom he had raised as the Viltrumite heir, turned out to be too damaged by human emotions. He's not just weak, he's dangerous. Not only to enemies, but to the Viltrum Empire itself. Nolan sees that leaving Mark on Earth could result in him rebelling at any moment, as already happened today due to some human attachment. But killing his son is also impossible, not because he loves him, but because he spent years on him. And there are no others like him on Viltrum. He is active, underdeveloped, but still potentially valuable. After all, Mark is Nolan's son, a conqueror of thousands of planets and one of the strongest and most valuable Viltrumites. Nolan decides to reprogram Mark, planning to return after some time, knowing he can conquer the world with the Viltrum Empire anytime since Earth is weakened. Nolan leaves to report to the Empire and prepare a real invasion, no longer through manipulation, but with an army. And Mark, he will leave behind, observe, let him ripen, or go crazy. Either way, he'll He'll be useful. After all the destruction, thousands of victims, Mark is taken to a GDA hospital where he quickly recovers, but not his mother. When Mark finally healed, he spent almost all his time in the hospital corridor, watching as the doctors tried to save Debbie, while Cecil sat next to him, saying everything would be okay, that she would be fine, but he was giving false hope. Since Debbie wouldn't survive, and Cecil knew this very well, he decided to use Mark for his own purposes, preparing for Nolan's invasion and the Empire's arrival. Cecil imposed on him that Mark must, just oblige to redeem his guilt for his father and himself, since it was they who destroyed the city. He reinforced this with the fact that Debbie would have wanted this, that she would have wanted Mark to help people. Mark had no choice but to agree, as otherwise he had nowhere to go, with neither a mother nor a father. After some time, Mark became an anonymous hero in a mask, or wore a bandana like Hooded Mark from the alternate universe. This was also supported by the fact that Cecil, in moments of disobedience, threatened Mark to disconnect Debbie from life support. Mark gradually became more and more bitter towards people, his father, and the Viltrum Empire. On one hand, for him, most people are like Cecil, selfish, cruel, hypocritical, but some are still worthy of life. His father, on the other hand, he both hates and idolizes because he's his father, just as he idolized the Viltrum Empire. And so, gradually, Mark trained to conquer the planet himself, and partially prepare it for the arrival of the Viltrum Empire, so he could negotiate with them and become the local Emperor of Earth. After all, if he becomes Emperor of Earth, he will personally be able to control which people to leave alive, and which not. Kill those like Cecil and his kind. Kill the hypocritical pieces of garbage, and spare those like his mother. Mark became progressively isolated in the Dark Realm, practicing and retaliating and slowly metamorphosing into the character Nolan has always envisioned him to be, relentless and resolute. However, as he went deeper and deeper into this process, it became clearer and clearer to him that that's not what he wants really. He just doesn't need the Earth. He needs something more. He needs a different kind of Earth, where there won't be that much oppression of feelings, and where people like Cecil won't be abusive. Following through with all the killings, every single crime, every step towards the big finale, was not only tearing him apart from the inside, but was also causing his moral doubts to become more and more profound. Perhaps he might be not like this at all. Maybe he's not a Viltrumite, and rejecting his father's and Empire's ideology might be his rightful act. This thought recurred over time, specifically when he had time to stay alone with his thoughts, when random thoughts about her mother's fate popped up, or when he was haunted by her words that still stayed with him in his memory despite the years. He was not only the heir of Viltrum, not only the tool that the Empire controls. He was a child who was sincerely puzzled by the fact that he didn't know where his place was. Perhaps he felt the pain of being unable to express himself. At the crossroads of his decision to move to the next attack on some city yet to be conquered, or the choice to opt otherwise so that he could be reconciled among other thoughts, a different event brought his musings to an abrupt stop. Viltrum Empire, once again, had dispatched its troops to destroy the Earth. Nolan had come back. It dawned on Mark now that his father had never given up on him. He wasn't in for a peaceful conversation. He had returned to take Mark home, to repossess Earth, to put his son in a lower rank, and to begin conquest anew. Mark found himself standing at a crossroads. To him, it was perfectly clear that if he followed Nolan, he would be condemned. Without doubt, he would be coerced to be what he never really was again. On the other hand, if he stood against his father, he would be unable to have peace with the Empire ever again. However, Mark was not the same scared boy easily influenced by his father. He was more powerful, he was prepared, and he had the right support to do so. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your opinion in the comments. I'll be happy to read each one and respond. Good luck, everyone.